So hi guys, in this video we are going to talk about a very important concept called constraint motion, and this is going to be a one-shot video. So it will have all the concept that you require for constraint motion for any examination, whether it be JEE Mains, JEE Advanced, BITSET, NEET, AIMS or anything. Okay, even Olympiads. So we'll be starting with very basics and we'll be taking it to much further level. So let us get started. So when we talk about constraint motion, what do we mean is, so what do we mean by the term constraint? Okay. So as the name suggests, in the constraint motion, we'll be studying the kind of motion where the bodies are not free to move the way they want. So we'll be studying the kind of motions where bodies are not free to move the way they want. So why is this so? So let us take the example that we've studied previously. So let us say that there is a block of mass m1 and there is a block of mass m2, and let us say that they are connected by a rope. As we have already discussed this thing in one of the videos earlier, that if m2 has an acceleration of a, m1 has to have an acceleration of a only, because the length of this rope cannot change. Okay, the length of this rope L is constant, and that's why the acceleration of both the bodies has to be same. So this is a kind of constraint motion. This m1 cannot have a random acceleration provided that there is acceleration a of m2. Okay, so this m1 is bound to have acceleration which is equal to m1, or we can write this relation as m1, acceleration of m1 is always equal to acceleration of m2. So this is what we call a constraint relation. So this is what we call a constraint relation. So we'll be developing these kind of relations for various systems. So the first system that we are going to talk about is the pulley system, which is a very important system. So we'll be talking about a very good shortcut which will be very helpful in examination later on. But now, first of all, we'll talk about the concept, that how we actually go about solving such problems, and then we'll be talk about the short trick also. And I would really advise that please don't just blindly follow the short trick. Okay, keep the concept in mind also, because that would give you much more confidence and that would enable you to solve much difficult problems also. So what is a pulley? So we know that pulley is a system where we have some ropes hanging on both the ends, and through these ropes we have some masses m1 and m2. So this is what a pulley look like. So in general we'll assume that the pulley that we are taking is massless. In the rotation motion we'll be taking the pulley with masses, but we'll be now assuming that the pulley that we are taking are massless and frictionless. So in the pulley systems, let's say we take a very simple pulley system where we have a mass m1 and we have a mass m2 here. So let us say that we want to find what is the acceleration of this mass m1 a1 and what is the acceleration of this mass m2 a2. So let us say that I want to do it by the conventional way. So I will write one equation for this m1, then I will write one second equation based on FVD for this m2. But how many variables do I have? I also have a variable called tension. So I have three variables, T1, A1 and A2. So there are three variables, T1, A1 and A2. And the equation that I can make based on FVD is only two. I can solve forces in the vertical direction for M1, and I can also solve the forces in the vertical direction for M2, and I can write two equations. In these cases where we have more number of variables and less number of equations, generally there is one more equation that we require, and that equation we get by applying the constraint relation. So in this system, in this very simple system, what is the constraint relation? As we already discussed previously, the constraint relation is that A1 should be equal to A2. Now, when I write A1 equal to A2, you have to note that what I'm actually saying. So first thing is, the length of the rope cannot change. The length of this rope cannot change. So let us derive this fact first. Okay, let us derive this fact. Let us not believe in it. First of all, let us derive this fact. So let's say that we have a pulley. Let's say that we have a pulley, and this pulley has a mass m1, and here we have mass m2. Now in this pulley, I can say that if this mass is moving by some distance x1 upwards, and if this m2 is moving by some distance x2 downwards, I can say that the length of the rope has to be same, because we are not attaching any new rope. So the length of the rope in the previous case, what is the previous case? In the case where these two were not moving, And now in this case, when this is moving by x1 upwards, and when mass of m2 is moving by x2 downwards, in this case also the length of the rope has to be same as the previous. Now because the length of the rope is same, I can say that this change has to be same. Okay, these changes has to be same. If this is, let's say, decreasing the length of the rope by x1, this has to increase the length of the rope by x2. Or without forgetting about signs, we can say one thing, that x1 is equal to x2. Okay, now how do we deal with sign? So we assume the directions. So I'm assuming that m1 is moving upwards, and I'm assuming that m2 is moving downwards. Now because m1 is moving upwards and m2 is moving downward, I can directly write that x1 equal to x2. Or you can write it in this way, then let's say that m1 is decreasing the length of the rope, so you can write minus x1, and we know that m2 is increasing the length of the rope, then you can write plus x2, and you can make it to be 0, because you know that net change in length has to be 0. So it will imply that x2 is equal to x1. Okay, so the relation that you will develop, depends on the directions that you will take. I could have taken that, let's say that m1 is moving by x1 downwards and m2 is also moving by x2 downwards. Now in that case, I could not have developed this relation. In that case, my relation would have been that let's say this x1 is also increasing the length of rope, so this is x1, and this x2 is also increasing the length of rope, so this is x2. So x1 plus x2 has to be 0. Net change in length of the rope has to be 0. So I could have write x1 is equal to minus x2 and not plus x2. Okay, so that depends upon the choice of directions that you take. So what we do is, in pulley, we try to first of all develop these kind of relations, and then with these relations we try to develop the relations for acceleration. So when we are saying that x2 is equal to x1, what we can do is we can differentiate this equation to get a relation between velocities of mass m1 and m2. So we can write, because x2 is equal to x1, and if I differentiate on both the sides with respect to time, I will get dx2 by dt is equal to dx1 by dt, and in place of dx2 by dt I can write v2, and in place of dx1 by dt I can write v1. Okay, similarly, if you will differentiate this again, you can write dv2 by dt is equal to dv1 by dt, and you can get that a2 is equal to a1. Okay, acceleration of both the masses m1 and m2 are same. Okay, in which directions? In the direction that we have assumed initially, which was that m2 was moving down and m1 was moving up. If I have assumed the directions that m1 is moving down and m2 is also moving down, you could have seen that I would have differentiated this relation 2 times to get a1 is equal to minus a2. Okay, so the first task is that assume the direction. You can assume any random directions for all the blocks, and based on these directions try to develop these relations. Now how to develop such relations? Such relations are very easy to develop for binary system, but when we add more pulleys and masses, these relations are a bit difficult to develop. So we'll learn a trick through which we can develop any relation, but let us now try to develop these relations for complicated system also conceptually. So let us say that we have some system like this. So there is a pulley, then there is a mass m1, then through this rope, instead of a mass, now we have one more pulley, and we have a mass m2 and m3. So a few concepts which I would like to talk about when we are talking about multiple pulley system is that, so we assume that pulley are massless. But we know that sigma f is equal to ma is valid for all the things in this universe, provided that we are looking at a inertial frame. So sigma f is equal to ma is always valid. So for this pulley also, if we apply sigma f equal to ma, we can see that mass will become 0. That means sigma f is equal to 0. So in a massless pulley, net forces across that pulley has to be 0. What does that mean? So let us say that in this rope, I assume the tension to be T1. So I think that now you have a very good idea from the everyday video that why this tension on this pulley will be upwards. Tension is always a pulling force. And we can also say that there will be T2 here and T2 here. Okay, so let's say there is a tension T2 in this row and there is a tension T1 in this row. Now based on this fact that sigma f has to be 0, I can say that on this pulley there is an upward force of T1 and there is a downward force of 2T2. So I can say that T1 has to be equal to 2T2. So this is the one relation that we generally develop in multiple pulley systems. Apart from this relation, the other relations, how we get other relations, how we get relations between acceleration, let us talk about that. So how we get relations between acceleration is, so there is one short trick as I've already said, which we'll discuss later. So the conceptually how we do it, so what you can do is you can try to note the effects of movement of other masses on any one mass. Okay, so let us say that I choose mass m3. I choose mass m3 and I have allowed the free movement of m1 and m2. So let us say that m1 is moving in any random direction, let's say upwards by x1. Let's say m2 is moving by any random direction, let's say x2 upwards. So I will try to note that what is the effect on m3. Okay, let's say that this pulley was fixed. So what is the net effect on m3 by the movement of x1 and x2? So if m1 is moving by x1 upwards, this m2 is moving by x2 upwards, what is the net movement of m3 and in which direction? So we can see, we can see the effects of them individually. So let us say that there is no such pulley system, and if this m2 is moving by x2 upwards, I could have directly said that this m3 would also move by x2 downwards. So I can write, let's say that this m3 is moving by some distance x3, and let's say that I'm assuming that x3 is downwards. So I'm writing that x3 is equal to x2, positive x2, and from x1. So why positive x2? We have already derived that the length of this rope has to be constant. So the net decrease in length because of this m2 has to be equal to net increase in length because of this m3. Now see, a very important thing is that when m1 is moving by x1, what is happening? When m1 is moving by x1 upward, this pulley is moving down by x1. When m1 is moving up by x1, because the length of this rope also has to be conserved, this pulley is moving down by x1. So I can say that this part of the pulley and this part of the pulley both are moving by x1, okay, because the center of the pulley is shifting. So what happens is you can directly see that there are two ropes. Okay, please note this point. This is a very important point. Lot of students face difficulty in understanding this. So if this is moving by x1 upwards, what is happening is this pulley, the center of this pulley is moving by x1 downwards. Now when center of this pulley is moving by x1 downwards, what you can see is that there are two ropes. There was a length of rope x1 and there was a length of rope x1. These two ropes actually winded up, okay, or you can say that these two ropes actually moved down. This part of the rope is still there, okay, this part of the rope which was attached to upper part of the pulley is still there, but these two part of the ropes, these two sections of the rope, each of which was equal to x1, are no longer there, okay. Or when I say that they are no longer there, what I mean is they have moved down or they have winded up on this pulley. So because we were only concerned about the motion of m3, see, if the rope is winded down, you could have argued that why m2 is not moving, because m2 should also move and m3 should also move. But how we are doing is we are moving other bodies, we are moving all the bodies, and we are just noting the effects of all these bodies on one system. So we are noting the effects of m1, m2, or let's say n amount of bodies that we have on m3 only. So we'll assume that after they have moved, they are not moving further, only m3 is allowed to move now. So if this was moving x1, the center of the pulley was moving by x1 downwards, these two ropes were actually winding up. So you could see that m3 has to move by a distance of x1 plus x1, okay, because this will move downwards. So this part of the rope and this part of the rope, so both the part of the rope will actually add up to this length, and m3 has to move downward by a distance of 2x1, okay. So I can write that x3 is equal to x2 plus 2x1. x3 is equal to x2 plus 2x1. What I've done is, so we have moved m1 and we have moved m2 in some random directions, and then we are taking a note of the effects of these x1 and x2 motion on m3, and we have figured out that it's x3 is equal to x2 plus 2x1. For the direction of x3, I have assumed that let the direction of x3 be downwards. So the initial directions are very important, and you need to follow the direction that you have taken, because later on when we will be applying the equation of motion, the directions of acceleration will be same as that of x1 that we have taken. As we have seen earlier, that if you will change the direction of any of the motion, let us say that I say that this m2 is moving by x2 downwards. So you have already seen that these equations or the results that you are getting will change. Let us try that. So let us say that this m2 is now moving by x2 downwards. This m2 is moving by x2 downwards. What should happen? Now if I write the equation for m3, that will be that x3 will be equal to, now this is moving by x2 downwards, so this is increasing the length of rope. So what should happen? If this is increasing the length of rope, and I've assumed that, let's say that m3 is also moving downward, I can say that because of this increase in length of x2, what should happen? The length of m3 should actually decrease. So x3 is basically equal to minus of x2. Okay, x3 is equal to minus. Why this minus of x2? Because I have assumed initially that m3 was moving down, but because of the motion of m2 downwards, m3 has to move up. So that's why this is minus x2, and the rest of the relation will automatically remain same, the 2x1 part. Because it is still moving by x1 upwards, the pulley will move down by x1, and both these part of the rope, x1 and x1, will wind up, and m3 has to move by 2x1 downwards, which is my initial assumed direction. So this will be the relation. So you need to be very, very careful about the initial direction that you choose. You have the liberty to choose any direction that you want, but just stick to it then. This is how we develop some constraint relations. Now let us talk about the short trick. So let us redraw the same system, and so this time we'll see that how that system could have been solved by a much easier way. But I would again advise that if you didn't understand the concept part, don't move on to this part, watch the concept part again, because then only this will be very helpful. So let us say the system was something like this. This was m1, m2 and m3. Now I wanted to find a relation between x1, x2 and x3, which I know that I can differentiate and get a relation between accelerations a1, a2 and e3. So what we do is, first of all, we assume some tensions. Let's say this is t1, this is t1, and let's say that this is some t2, t2. Now as we have already started that because this pulley is massless, t1 should be equal to 2t2. So now what we'll do is, we'll use a principle from a further chapter, which is the work energy, which says that net work done by, we'll understand this statement in just a second. So net work done by an internal force on a system is 0. Net work done by an internal force on a system is 0. So first of all, what is work and what is internal force? So for now, you can just remember that if there is any force which is displacing a body by some distance d, then we say that there is something called work which has been done. How we define work is we simply take dot products of F and D. So for example, let's say that there is a body of mass m, and there is a person who is applying a force F, and this mass m is moving by some distance d. So if I ask you that what exactly is the work done by this person who is applying the force F, you will say that the work done is equal to F dot D. But as we know that F and D are in same direction, that becomes FD. Okay, so this is work done. Obviously, we could also draw for this case. Now let us say that this is M and this is the force applied, and let's say due to some mechanism it is moving in this direction. So in this case, what is the work done by this force? You can directly write that work done is F dot D, and in this case, because the angle, the cos is 180 degree, it will become minus FD. Okay, so this is what you can just remember right now for work. Now regarding the internal force, so what exactly is internal force? So there are two kind of forces that generally acts on a system. One is the internal force and one is the external force. So what is internal forces? Internal forces are those forces which, when you take into account into the entire system, will actually cancel out. For example, tension. We have already studied this part that if T1 and T1 is there will be T1 and T1 here also. Okay, the ends of the rope will be pulling these points by tension downwards also. We have already studied this part. Similarly, as there are masses, there will be a T2 here also, T2 here also. So if you will see what is the net tension force on the system, you will see that this T1 and T1 will cancel out, this T1 cancel out, these will cancel out, and these will cancel out. So ultimately, we have no tension in the entire system. So these are the kind of forces that we call internal forces. Now let us suppose that we have a block of mass m and a man is applying some force on it. Now if I consider my system limited to this mass m, I can say that there exists a force F on this system. We know that all the forces are equal and opposite in nature, but this force F and this force F will also be there on the men. But if I consider my system to be this mass m only, I can say that there exists an external force on the system of mass m. Okay, so these are what we call external force. So you can say that tension is an internal force, and that's why we will use the statement that we have just now stated, that net work done by the internal force on a system is zero. So now what we'll do is, in the similar case that we have taken, in this case only, so in this case we will try to apply the principle that the net work done by the internal forces is zero. So let me redraw the system again. So let's say this was m1, this was some m2, this was some m3. So let us first write the tension. This is T1, T1, this was T2, this was T2. I know that T1 should be equal to 2T2. Now what I'll do is, I'll assume the directions of the motion for m1, m2 and m3. So let us say that this m1 is moving by some distance x1 upwards. Let's say that this m2 is moving by some distance x2 upwards. And let's say that this m3 is moving by some distance x3 downwards. Now what you can write is, you need to do the net work done by internal forces on the system is zero. So you have to first of all see all the mass body, all the bodies which have some mass, so that we can write the work done equation. So we see three masses. So for mass m1, I can write T1 is upwards and x1 is also upwards. So plus T1 into x1. Then I can say for mass m2, T2 is upwards and x2 is also upwards. So this becomes plus T2 into x2. T2 is the force and x2 is the displacement. And then for m3, I can say the tension is a pulling force, so it is still upwards, but the motion is downwards. So I can write minus T2 into x3 equal to 0. So you can directly say that T1 x1 in place of T2, now you can write T1 by 2 plus T1 by 2 x2 minus T1 by 2 x3 equal to 0. So you can write 2x1 is equal to, or 2x1 plus x2 equal to x3. And this is similar to, this is exactly same as the relation that we have got earlier. So you could apply this principle to any system. Just keep in mind that you just need to take, first of all, you just need to draw the tensions, and then you have to do net work done by an internal force like tension is always zero. So you just need to identify all the mass points and then simply write the work done for all those masses. So I hope this part is pretty much clear. Obviously we can now differentiate it two times to get 2a1 plus a2 equal to a3. Now after we have this equation, let's say that I wanted to find what is the exact amount of accelerations of a1, a2 and a3, provided that this system is allowed for free movement. So if this was the question, what you could have directly said is that you can get one equation for this, you can get one equation for this, you can get one equation for this. How you can get the equation? So as you can see that there is a m1g force downwards, there is a T1 force upwards, and because the x1 you have taken is also upwards, so you can say that if x1 is upwards, or I can say if a1 is upwards, there will be a pseudo force m1a downwards. So for this m1, I can say there is a force T1 upwards, m1a force is downwards, and there is a force m1g downwards. So I can write T1 is equal to m1a plus m1g. Similarly, I can write equation for masses m2, and I can also write equations for mass m3, and in this way I'll have three equations. So we'll be solving some problems where I'll be providing the full solutions. So we'll have three equations and we'll be using this. So in the end we'll have five variables, T1, T2, A1, A2 and A3, and combining with this we have five equations also. Three equations for each of mass m1, m2 and m3, one equation of the constraint motion and one equation of the tension. So then we can find anything that we want. So this is about the concept part of Poulet systems. Let us solve some problems. So now let us say that we have some system like this. So the Poulet arrangement is as shown. We are given a mass of m1, we are given a mass of m2, and we are given a mass of m3. We are required to find what is the constraint relation between a1, a2 and a3. I would advise, please pause the video and use a short trick that we have applied and try to get the answer. Also, try to get the answer by the concept that we have just now understood. So first of all, let me do it by the concept. So by the concept way, how we were doing is that let us say that m1 is moving by some x1 here m2 is moving by some x2 here, and let's say m3 is moving by some x3 here. So I will note the effects of the movement of x1 and x2 on x3. If m1 is moving with x1 in right direction, you can see that m3 should move down. This pulley also should move down, and thereby m3 should move down. Now how much does this pulley will move down? That is the question. So you know one thing, that if pulley is moved by a certain distance, let's say x, if the center of the pulley is moved by a distance x, there is a length of rope 2x which is added into the system. Now we know that the length of the rope is decreasing here is x1, and the length of the rope increasing here by a motion of x of pulley will be 2x. So I can write the decrease in length of the rope, which is x1, and here I can write the increase in length of rope, which is x, which is 2x, by the motion of the pulley x. So I can write, if this is moving by x1, and let's say the center of the pulley is moving by a distance x downwards, so what will be the net change in length of rope because of this? It will increase by 2 times. So I can say that x1 minus x1 plus 2x should be equal to 0. So I can directly say that x is equal to x1 by 2. Okay. I hope that you understood this concept very clearly. Similarly, we can say that m2 will also move by x2 leftwards, and to create this x2, the center of this pulley have to move downwards by a distance of x2 by 2 only, because if it moves by distance of x2 by 2, then we'll see that there will be addition of new ropes of length x2 by 2 on both the sides, and ultimately to a new rope of length x2 which is added to this part of the system. So ultimately we can say that x2 part of rope is decreasing here and x2 part of rope is increasing here, and that's why they're equal. So I can directly write that x3, which is the motion of the center of the pulley, or the mass m3 which is connected to it, I can directly say that x3 is equal to x1 by 2 plus x2 by 2. Okay. So this is the relation that I am getting, or I can write it as 2x3 is equal to x1 plus x2. Now let us try to do it by the short trick that we have. You will see by short trick the problem is very simple. You can simply write that there is a T here, there is certain tension here, and there will be T here, and because there are tension TT here, there will be a net tension of 2T here. Okay, we have already studied why this is 2T. So now you can directly write for mass m1, T is in this direction and x1 is also in this direction. So because they are in same direction, I will write plus T into x1. For m2, you can see T is in left direction and the motion is also assumed to be taken in left direction. So you will write plus T into x2. Now finally, for the mass m3, you can see the tension is upwards. The 2T tension is upwards, but the motion is downwards. So you will write something like minus 2T into x3, and this is the net work done by all the tension forces, and this has to be 0. So you will write x1 plus x2 is equal to 2x3. So this is the equation that you are getting, which you can differentiate 2 times to get a1 plus a2 equal to 2a3. I would strongly recommend to follow the concepts, but in exams or for practice also, you can try to directly get this result from this shortcut. Okay. So let us move on to next question. So this time, let us say that we have some system like this. What we want to find is the accelerations of this body, the real accelerations of this body when the system is left. How will we do it? Let us assume there is some tension T. So let us assume there is some tension T. Now because this is one rope, there will be only a tension T in entire rope. So there will be a T here, 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 in all the places there will be a tension T. In this rope I can say, because this is a different rope and since this is a pulley which is massless, there will be a tension 2T here. No. So now let us assume that the motion of this M1 is x1 upwards and the motion of this M2 is x2 downwards. So I can directly say that plus T into x1 minus 2T into x2 should be equal to 0. This is minus because 2T and x2 are in opposite directions. So I can get x1 is equal to 2x2, which I can differentiate 2 times to get a1 is equal to 2a2. So this is the constraint relation that I have. Now let us write the equation of motion for m1. because the x1 was assumed to be upwards, or we can say the acceleration was assumed to be upwards, there is a downward pseudo force of m1a on this body. So for m1 we can draw the FBD in the vertical direction, as there is a tension upwards, there is a mass of m1g which is the weight force, and there is another force which is the pseudo force of m1 into a1. So we can write the equation that T is equal to m1a1 plus m1g. For m2, similarly we can say that because a2 was downwards, there is a pseudo force of m2a2 upwards. So we can draw the FBD that there is a 2T force of tension. Then we have m2a2 as an upward force, and finally we have another force of m2g. So these are the final forces that we have. You can write the equation that net upward force has to be equal to net downward force. So 2T plus m2a2 is equal to m2g. For a1 and a2, you can use this relation, and then you will have only two variables, T and A, to eliminate. So that's how you can get tension and acceleration for this system. Just keep a note of this point. Again, I am saying that the direction of these accelerations a1 and a2 are same as the direction of this x1 and x2. So I think now we have a very good idea of how to solve any pulley system. So let us try to solve one more problem. So now let us talk about this problem. So we are given a situation where we are given that there is a block A of mass m and there is a block B of mass 3m, and then we are applying an external force F on it. So what we need to find is what is the acceleration a1 and a2 of these blocks. So at the first glance the system looks a bit complicated, but what we can do is we can develop the constant relations, and then we can simply apply the equations of the free body diagram equations. So let us try to find the constant relation first. I would really advise you to pause the video and try this problem yourself. So let us say that there is some tension in the rope. We can see that this is a single rope. So let's say the tension is T. Now because there is a tension T and T here, I can say that there is a tension 2T and there is a tension 2T here. For this part, I can say this is a single rope that we have taken. So this is T, and because this is T, this will become 2T, and similarly this will also become 2T. So ultimately, the net tension on 3m is T plus 2T plus 2T, which is 5T, and on block of mass m, the net tension is 2T plus 2T. That let us say that the motion of A was x1 in right direction, and the motion of B was x2 in let's say this is also in right direction. I don't know if this is correct or not, but you don't need to worry about these because the equations will be set in these way only. So we can directly say that because the net tension, the total tension was 4T, the net work done is 4T into x1. 2T and x1 are in same direction, and for this part you can say that because tension, net 5T tension was in this direction and x2 is assumed in this direction, so these are negative and this has to be 0. So you will get that 4x1 is equal to 5x2, or differentiating it 2 times, 4a1 is equal to 5a2. So this is the equation that you will get. Now you can simply draw the FBDs and write the equations. So for mass m, we can say that there is a net force of 4T here, and let us say that it is accelerating in the right side. As we have assumed the x1 to be in right side, acceleration has to be assumed to be in right side. So there will be a pseudo force of ma1 in the backward direction. So we can write that ma1 should be equal to 4T. Similarly, for mass of 3m, we can draw the FBD. We can say that it has a force F on right side. On left side, it has net tension of 5T. And because for this also x2 was assumed in this direction, or the a2 was assumed in this direction, there will be a force of 3m into a2 in left direction. The net force will be 3m into a2 leftwards. So you can write equation for this also, that F is equal to 5T plus 3m a2. Now combining all the three relations, you can very easily get a1, a2 and tension also, if that is required. So that was not asked. So you have three equations and we have three variables only. So you can try getting a1 and a2. So I'm mentioning the answers. So for A, you should get that acceleration of A, the body A, should come out to be 20F by 73, and acceleration of B body should come out to be 16F by 73. So you can try this problem yourself and get the answers. So now we will be so now we have talked about pulley, and I think that you now have a very good idea about the pulley systems. So now let us talk about the wedge constraints. See, what is a wedge? We have already taken and done some examples of the wedge. So a wedge was something like this. Let's say that there is a wedge. So a wedge was a block, a triangular block, which has some inclination theta and has some mass. So let's say this is capital mass M. Now let's say that I am putting a block of small mass M on it. So when I say that we are applying some wedge constraint, so what we are saying is we are analyzing the motion of this small mass M when this capital mass of wedge, capital mass M of when this wedge of mass capital M is moving in any direction. So we can develop the relations as per the requirement, but a basic wedge constraint that we say is if there are two body, and let's say that these two bodies are touching each other. So if this force F is applied, and we are saying that these two bodies are touching each other, we have to say that V1 is equal to V2. Okay, the velocities of both these blocks has to be equal since they are touching each other. Okay, at all the instant if they are touching each other, V1 is equal to V2. This sounds like a very simple relation, but we'll see when it gets complicated. So for the general cases, we can derive one more result. So let us say that this is a wedge of mass capital M and this is a block of mass small m. So now what I'm doing is I'm moving this capital mass M wedge by some x backwards. So let us say I'm moving it by some x backwards. Now obviously you can imagine that this M will also go down. So let's say this M is going down in some way like this. Let's say this is y1. So we can say this theta has to remain theta. Okay, this angle will not change. So we can say the sine theta should be equal to perpendicular upon hypotenuse, which is y1 by x. So this should be sine theta. Sine theta should be equal to what? Sine theta should be equal to y1 by x. So this is your constraint relation, because then you can differentiate it and then you can simply write that a1 is equal to, let's say that this small block, for this small block M, the acceleration is a1, and for this wedge the acceleration is a2. So you can say that acceleration a1 is equal to a2 sine theta. Okay. See, there is a very important thing that you have to keep a note of, that there might be cases where this theta is changing. In that case this relation might not be valid, because in that case you will have to differentiate this theta also in terms of time. Okay, but since the theta is constant here, I'm saying that the sine theta is also constant and we are directly differentiating y1 and x. In other cases there would have been a term of d theta by dt also, which could have been replaced by omega. So now let us do some problems of wedge constraint relation. Okay, so this is the question. So we are given that this is a wedge and this is a block of mass m which is placed on this wedge, and there are some balls here. Okay, so this mass m can only move downwards, it cannot move in left or right direction. So you need to find what are the relations between the accelerations of both, and you also have to find what are their actual accelerations. So we can develop the first equation of constraint relation in the similar way as we have did for previous example, that let us assume that this is angle is theta. So let us assume that this is moving by x in right direction and this is moving downwards by some y. So we can say that this time tan theta is equal to y by x. Okay. So tan theta, so the relation will depend on the situation. You just need to keep in mind the process through which we are deriving the relations. So we can say that in this case tan theta should be equal to y by x if this is moving by y downwards. Then you can differentiate it two times to get acceleration. Let's say acceleration of this is a1 and acceleration of this is a2. So then you can say ki acceleration a1 should be equal to a2 tan theta. So this is the equation 1 that we have. Then you can simply write the equation of motions for both the blocks and you can get their final accelerations. So for the equation of motion for this m, you can draw it like this. This is m. So you can say there will be a normal force on this, and so there will be a normal force on this like this. So that normal force will be making normal force like this. So that normal force will make an angle. So this angle is theta. So this is theta. This is 90 minus theta. So it will be making theta from vertical, and there will be mass mg downwards, and the acceleration A is also in downward direction, which is A1. So we'll apply some MA1 in the upward direction. So we can say there is some MA1, there is some MG, and there is some normal here, which is making theta with the vertical. Now since acceleration is in the vertical direction, we'll be writing equation in vertical direction. We'll be taking normal component in vertical direction only. They've already discussed this thing, that while writing the equations from FBD, try to write one equation along the acceleration and the another equation in the direction perpendicular to the acceleration. Okay, the advantages of this we'll be discussing later on. So here you can directly say that MA1 plus n cos theta should be equal to mg, and for capital M also you can say that there is normal, which is making a theta from vertical, there is a capital mg, and yeah, there is an acceleration a2, so there will be a capital ma2 here. So now you can directly balance the equations for this also. This is ma2 and this is normal, so you can write the equation in horizontal direction as capital ma2 should be equal to n sin theta. So now you can solve these two equations and you can apply this relation of a1 equal to a2 tan theta, and you will get accelerations of both the bodies. So this was one example of wedge constraint relations. Now let us talk about some general constraint relations. This is the last topic. Okay, so don't worry, the video is getting very long. Okay, I believe that I'm trying to make it as exciting as possible and as simple as possible. So let us now talk about general constraint. So there are some constraints for which you cannot remember any relations or you cannot remember any methods. You just need to see the question and analyze it accordingly. So for example, so let us talk about some of these systems. So for example, let us say that there is a rod of length L which is sitting on the wall, and we are given that this the velocity of this end is v1. So try to find the velocity of this end, and let's say that this is given as theta. Okay, so this is not any kind of constraint. So that's why I said that before moving to any short trick, try to go to the concept. Now if you remember the concepts, you could directly think that let the velocity of this part is v2 downwards. Now I know one thing, that the length of this rope should not change. This is the constraint relation, that the length of this rope should not change. Now how to put it out mathematically? We can put it out that this end is increasing the length of the rod by how much velocity? If this is theta, this will also be theta. So this end is increasing the velocity of rod by v1 cos theta, and this end is decreasing the velocity by, this is 90 minus theta, so this become v2 cos 90 minus theta, which is sin theta, minus v2 sin theta should be equal to 0. So you can write v1 is equal to v2 tan theta. So that's how you can develop constraint relations for other bodies also. So let us do one more problem. Okay, so we have some situation like this. This is a bead of mass m1, this is a block of mass m2. So we are given that this end is moving with v1 here, so you need to find what is the velocity of this end. So let us say that the velocity for mass m2 is v2. You can simply say that the length of this rope should not change. So if this is v1, this will be v1 cos theta. So this m1 is increasing the length of this rope in this direction by v1 cos theta, and this will be decreasing the length of the rope in upward direction by v2. So this should be 0. So we can say v1 cos theta should be equal to v2. This is the constraint relation. So this is the last question that we'll do for constraint motion. So we are given that this is a bead, and what we are doing is, so this was the system. Initially all the ropes were tight. Now what we are doing is we are leaving this bead downwards. So since we are leaving this bead downwards, this part will move down, and this m will also move upwards by some velocity. So let us say that we are given that velocity of this bead at any instant is v1. What is the velocity of this mass m at that instant? What is the velocity v2? You are also given that the length between these two is fixed, which is L. Okay, length between these ends is L. So I hope you can try it now yourself. So what we can say is, we can say that any instant, let us say that this bead has come down by some distance, and it is something like this, and this mass m2 has moved up. I can say that the velocities along the rope should be same. So if this is v1 downwards, let's say this is theta, I can directly say that this will be theta. So this velocity will be, this is 90 minus theta obviously. So this velocity will be equal to v1 cos of 90 minus theta sin theta. This is the increase in length of the rope. And we can say that let's say this capital M is moving with a velocity v2 upwards. So this is decrease in the length of rope, which is v2. This should be equal to 0. So we can say v1 sin theta should be equal to v2, but theta is not given. So what we can do is we can find the value of theta. So since we are given the distance between these ends is L, and let us say that we wanted to find the expression that what is the velocity v2 as a function with this height h, with this height h denotes the amount of distance which is traveled by this bead downwards till that time, till any time t it has moved a distance of h downwards. So now what we'll do is we'll simply write v1 sin theta equal to v2, and in sin theta we can say that sin theta is v1 into sin theta is h upon what is this length, h upon the hypotenuse, which is under root h square plus l square, should be equal to v2. So this is the final constant relation that we have for v1 and v2. So I hope guys that now your concepts in constant relations are really clear. If you have any further doubt on constant relation, please do mention in the comments. I've tried to elaborate on all the topics as I deemed fit, but still if you feel that the explanation for any part was not very clear, please let me know in comments so that I can add more